and welcome back to Inside Number 23, my podcast which is all about knitting, sewing and generally living the craftiest life possible. If you don't know, my name is Katie and you can find me on all various social medias as Miss Lavelli. I am most active on Instagram though, so it's probably best to follow me there if you want regular updates. I'm coming to you as always from Hertfordshire, which is just north of London in the UK, where I live with my husband Emrys, although he's not actually here today because he's been away on a stag do. And our gorgeous pug baby Rolly. I just want to say a huge welcome back to any of my long-term viewers and a big hello and welcome to anyone who's new. Thank you for coming to spend a little bit of crafty time with me today. And if you want any information about the podcast, everything that I talk about the podcast, all of the show notes can be found in the down bar, just down below. So just kind of click down and you can see all of the info in terms of what I'm going to be talking about today. If you would like to get in touch with me to do with anything about the podcast, my best recommendation to you is to drop me an email. Feel free to contact me about the podcast or sponsorship or prizes or anything like that, and I will get back to you as quickly as I can. So yeah, that's the kind of opening spiel all done. Welcome back, guys. It's felt like it's been an age since I've spoken to you, and that's probably an indication of how hectic the last week has been. Inside Number 23, it's been intense. You can kind of tell how intense it's been because I am in a very no-nonsense outfit with a very no-nonsense hairdo today. I literally just went, I need this hair off of my face and my shoulders and up, and this seemed like a more reasonable solution than completely shaving my head. It has been quite warm, so I usually have quite a lot of thick curly hair on display if you were new, but I'm in desperate need of a haircut as well. I think that will be coming in the near future. But I'm already rambling on, aren't I? I feel that that's probably an indication of the episode to come. Like I said, it's been a little bit of a hectic week. I haven't actually been able to do a huge amount of crafting over the past week. I have done some, which I'm very excited to share with you, but it's been on a couple of random projects. Some things that I have been working on haven't been worked on at all, and everything feels a little bit up in the air and a little bit all over the place, if I'm honest. So yeah, I think we should talk about a couple of general life things and administrative things before I kick off with all of the crafty goodness that I have to share this week. The first thing that I would like to say is I did make the announcement on last week's episode in my general waffle that Emrys and I are attempting to go vegetarian, or at the very least pescatarian. Vegetarian being eating no meat, pescatarian being only eating fish. And we have just passed the 1 week mark, and I'm happy to say that we have been not eating any meat over the past week. It has been a little bit intense. And I must admit I have been eating fish and I have been eating kind of animal products of other kinds, but no meat, and I think that that is a very good start. I want to say a huge thank you to all of the messages of support that I've had on us making this decision. A lot of really amazing stories have been left on my Instagram and emailed to me, and you're all incredibly inspiring, and just thank you for putting such positivity into my day-to-day life regarding this decision. It hasn't been easy so far. I must admit the main problems that I've had have been when it's going to buy kind of convenience food, shall we say. So if I want to pick up a sandwich at work, if I haven't made lunch or something like that, the amount of vegetarian options on offer are incredibly limited, and it's really opened my eyes to the fact that a lot of food choices are not as varied as I thought that they were. I've also not had an opportunity to do a lot of home cooking, which has been another thing that I think will really help with this transition, is actually preparing our own food fresh. But again, the kind of hectic nature of the past week has not made it possible for us to do that just yet. So I do think once we can get into more of a routine, things will become easier. But even though it has been hard, it's been a little bit problematic from day to day, and I have been having a few cravings. We've stuck to our guns over this past week, and hopefully we can continue as we've started. So again, thank you for all of the positivity and support regarding that. There are some things about why this week has been so stressful that I can't really share with you just now. The only thing that I would like to say is that I have been in the process of changing my job, and that is all coming to a head, and it very much did so over the past week. I'm very happy, I'm very excited. I have been rather dissatisfied in my current job for quite some time, so the idea of having a change of pace is very exciting, although I'm not the best person to deal with change. So again, lots of emotions being carried around in one person over the past week. So things may be a little bit erratic in terms of my content over the next several weeks. Please bear that in mind. Thank you for your patience regarding that, but I am still going to be uploading every week. It's just one of my ways of dealing with situations of stress is sometimes avoidance, which I don't want to do, but I know it's a habit that I can fall into, and also withdrawing completely from interactions. And one of my main interactions is, of course, this podcast and the content that I create for it. So I'm going to do my very best to continue to upload over the next couple of weeks, but I would very, very much appreciate your patience regarding that, in terms of if the content is not as riveting as it has been over the past couple of months. In general, I know that you guys are incredibly supportive and loving, and I know that you will understand, but I just wanted to put it out there just so that you're aware. If things seem a little bit off or a little bit different, there's nothing at all to worry about. It's all positive things. It's just a lot of changes are going on behind the scenes. And obviously, when I can share more information about what's going on properly in detail, I will. Bear with me. I will let you know when the time is right. Ooh, mysterious. One very exciting thing that is going to be happening in the very near future is Pomfest. I am going to be visiting Pomfest, which is this coming weekend. It is, I believe, the 14th and the 15th of July, a Friday and a Saturday, and I will be visiting on Friday, and I am so excited. I think the weather's going to be glorious. I think it's going to be a really, really fun day out, and I'm just so excited to see all of the vendors, to hang out with the ladies of Pom Pom magazine. I just think it's going to be amazing. As I always say about these type of things, if you do come by on Friday, please do feel free to say hello and come and introduce yourself. I am more than happy to have a little chat with you. It would be absolutely lovely to catch up with some of you, so do feel free to come and say hi. Bear in mind, I can get a little bit anxious around social situations, but in the past with these type of things, again, everybody has been so kind that it's been an absolute pleasure to say hello to you. So do please feel free to come up and have a little chat. I would absolutely love that. One more thing before we get on to the real stuff of this episode. In terms of my upload next week, I will most definitely be uploading a video next Monday, but it will probably not be in the regular podcast format. I've decided to put together a video all about Pomfest, about the time that I have there, about the vendors, talking in detail about it, and most likely showing off a couple of purchases, because I do intend to do a little bit of damage. I think I deserve it, considering what's been going on the last couple of weeks. I think I deserve a bit of a treat, but it will probably not be the regular podcast format, so bear that in mind. It will be probably a bit more vloggy, with some definite sitting and talking about how we got on and the type of day that we had, but all things will be back to normal the week after that. So there's that to look forward to, and I know that you guys really enjoy it when I share things like festivals with you, and this just gives me the opportunity to do that in a little bit more detail. So hopefully you will enjoy that next week. So I think that's enough kind of rabbiting on about general stuff. We haven't even got to a general waffle, and I'm already kind of blah 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 spilling information that's really got nothing to do with anything, but I think we should move on to our first segment, don't you? And it is, of course, what am I wearing? And as I said at the beginning of this episode, I have a no-nonsense outfit on today. It is my Coco dress, which is a beautiful pattern from Tilly and the Buttons, which I absolutely adore. I have been living in this dress over the past couple of weeks because it is so easy to throw on and go without any thought or any effort, and I love it. The fabric is this beautiful kind of Ponte de Roma jersey, so a heavier weight jersey with two-way stretch, which I purchased at Mood Fabrics when we visited New York in January. and I love it. I really am starting to wear it to death, so in order to kind of maintain its life for as long as possible, I definitely need to get my hands on some more Ponte Roma jersey and make a few more, because otherwise I'm going to wear this into the ground, and that is not something that I like. But it's a great pattern for comfort. It can be made into a top or a dress. I really love the dress version because it means you don't have to worry about anything else that you're wearing. You just throw on this and nothing else, which to me is always going to be a good thing. But it's great for beginners who haven't worked with jersey before, as it's relatively loose fitting. I have shown it to you before, but let me just hop up so you get a better idea of it if you haven't watched before. So this is my kind of midriff section. You can see there's a lot of room in here. I'm going to sit back down now. It does have pockets as well, little pockets, which are quite functional. I usually pop my phone into one of the small pockets in this dress when I'm just kind of tottering about the house. And yes, it's comfortable. I think it's really nice in terms of how it flatters the body, and yeah, it's a beautiful pattern. And as I always say about all of my Tilly and the Buttons garments, I want to make 100 more, but with this one particularly so. Okay, moving on from what I'm wearing, I think it's time that I shared a little bit of owl post with you. Yes, the little owls have come to me and been really, really generous this week. I received a beautiful parcel from Barbara of Knitting I Love, both the Knitting I Love shop and the podcast of the same name. Barbara does podcast, and if you haven't checked out her YouTube channel, you really, really, really should. I will obviously pop her details in the show notes down below, but hi Barbara. Barbara got in touch and wanted to send me some of her products, which I must admit are absolutely gorgeous and very unique, and I'm so happy to be able to share these with you and also be able to use them myself. I'm very, very excited about this, in case you can't tell. So what she basically sent to us, she sent me 2 of her pouches, and she sells these beautiful kind of felt accessories for knitting and also in this case for journaling, which is again very exciting. And here they are. These are the 2 pouches that she sent to us. This particular pattern is called the Tower, and I think it's slightly easier to see on this red one. So if you can see, that is a felt little pouch, but it also has this beautiful kind of castle tower pattern. Actually, I don't know the word, I would probably say embossed onto the felt. And I think that they're beautiful. I have admired Barbara's work from afar for a while, and therefore to see these really is something special. Now, the exciting thing about these pouches is that you can use them for knitting needle cozies. So I don't want to get them out because they're just so perfect, but basically you can slot your needles in and then pop these over so that your needles are kept safe. But you can also use them as pen holders for journaling, because these little poppers can obviously kind of pop in over the elastic that you get on a lot of notebooks for journaling. And I just think that they're beautiful. It's such a lovely idea, and everything that Barbara does is so well produced. She also popped in a couple of these little sets of her Knitting I Love tags, which basically means that you can sew these little tags onto your garments, and they have really cute things embossed on them. Again, embossed is probably not the right word, Barbara, I'm really sorry, but there's a little sheep and some paw prints and stars and hearts, and they're just lovely. And it would be such a nice finishing touch, you know, I think maybe on the hem of a sweater to have one of these sewn on, or to sew them onto a project bag or something like that. And they are beautiful. Thank you so much, Barbara, for sending those things our way. And I am, very excitingly, going to be including them in a giveaway, and more details about that giveaway are going to be right at the end of this episode. I'm really excited about it, but for now, just thank you so much, Barbara, like I said, for sending such beautiful things to us and for me to be able to share with my gorgeous audience whom I adore. And yeah, definitely check out her website and her YouTube channel, and as I said, all of the details for that will be in the down bar just down below. Okie dokie. I think it's time that we move on to a little bit of knitting content, don't you? It's time for What's on My Needles, and as I kind of hinted at the beginning of the episode, it's been a little bit of an odd week for knitting. Last week's episode, I shared with you all of the work that I'd done on my Oracle shawl, my beautiful test knit that I'm doing for Kristen of Veil and Vine Yarns. I also talked about wanting to pick up my ebony cardigan again after I get over my little bit of a knitting schlump that put me into. Neither of those things have been worked on this week for various reasons. It's been hectic, it's been stressful, and I didn't want to put that energy into my beautiful ebony cardigan, which I do love, even though it was a little bit stressful in itself. And also the test knit that I'm doing for Kristen, I was moving into a lace section, and I just knew that if I started knitting on that with the kind of feelings that have been inside me over the past week, I would screw it up, and that is the last thing that I want to do with that beautiful Oracle shawl. I have got a little bit of time set aside this afternoon to pick that up again when I'm at my parents' house, so I'm very excited about that. But the thing that has been getting me through over the past week is sock knitting. I know, it's insane. The last time that I actually worked on a sock, I mean, this is kind of besides the point. I was working on my socks last week. I did have a finished object of my Molly Weasley socks in the nomadic yarns that I'd been working on last week, so I have been doing sock knitting, but I had so many whips of socks that just were making me go mad when I was looking at them, because I didn't have the least bit of interest in picking them up and working on them. I loved working on my nomadic yarn socks because the yarn was gorgeous, but it was a struggle because I was knitting them on the 9-inch circular needles, didn't particularly enjoy it, and by the end they did feel kind of more effortful than anything else. So the fact that this week has been entirely fueled by sock knitting is a surprise to me, but it's pretty much the only thing that I have on my mind now is working on socks. So this is kind of a bit of a Sockathon episode, because I'm just going to be talking to you about socks. Because the drive and the passion to finish socks this week means that I have 2 finished objects. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So I'm going to start off with my first finished object, which is something that I have shared with you previously on the podcast, but it has been a very long time since it last made an appearance. And that is my beautiful finished pair of Scorpious socks. These are my Scorpious socks, named after my favourite Slytherin, Scorpius Malfoy from Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. These were cast on as a part of my Harry Potter Cal, which is running throughout this year. It's still running. More details on that can be found down below in my show notes and on our Ravelry group for Inside number 23. But yes, they are finished and I love them. This pattern is the Synneva pattern. Synneva. I never know how to pronounce it. It basically has this beautiful cable pattern that runs down the entirety of the sock. It also runs down the bottom of the heel, which I think is just a lovely touch. This yarn was gifted to me by lovely Kate of Selene. It is her Emerald City colourway and I adore it. This green makes me happy on so many levels. I really do think eventually I need to knit a garment out of this. Although I tend to say that about most green colourways that come into my life. But yes, these were almost entirely done. I had turned the heel on them and I was working on the foot, but I just, like I said, did not have the inclination to pick them up and work on them, and hadn't done for some time. However, after finishing my nomadic yarn socks, I really felt the need to kind of work on some socks, and sneakily, because I've been saying I'm not going to cast on socks until I finish the ones that I have, I did cast on another pair of socks, which I'm going to be sharing with you in a minute. But as well as working on the new pair of socks, these got a lot of love, and obviously so much love that they are now finished. I love this pattern, you guys. It is a paid for pattern on Ravelry. I have said previously that I thought it was free, but it is not. It's paid for, but it is worth it. It is beautiful. The construction is gorgeous. Like I said, the little heel detailing with the pattern running all the way down to the heel makes me really, really happy. And they fit beautifully. They look very different when they're off the sock blockers, I will say that, because all of the cabling really squishes them up. So they look super skinny. I'm just going to pop them off the sock blockers so that you can kind of see. Obviously, bear in mind that they have been stretched out on the sock blockers, but see how skinny they suddenly look when they're off there? It's because all of the cables obviously close up, so they look kind of really long and thin and weird. And I do have long feet. I have big feet, so that's why they look kind of like canoes, I guess, but I love them. I can't wait to wear them. I'm obviously going to be keeping them until it gets a little bit cooler, because the last thing that I want to do in the heat that we've currently been having is wear wool socks. And yeah, I'm so happy with them, and I'm so happy that they're finished, and I'm really, really pleased that I've managed to get quite a few different projects off the needles over the past week. So even though I feel that I haven't done a huge amount, I feel like I've done more than I actually thought, which is always good. So that is finished object number one, FO number one. FO number two is something that you may have seen already a little bit on my Instagram, because I did post a few pictures of this particular project over the last week. And this is a project that I cast on last Sunday whilst having dinner at my parents' house after filming last week's episode, and it's already finished. I mean, I'm kind of overwhelmed by that. I think that's a really, really good thing to have done, is cast on a project and finished it in the same week. The reason that I've been able to finish this project this week is because it's been my #1 stress knitting project over the past week. All of my fears, concerns, anxieties, and general feelings have been knit into these socks. And the interesting thing is that I've absolutely loved every second of knitting on them. Even though they're a stress knit project, it hasn't made me hate them in any way, but they do have some issues because of that, which is funny, but I'm gonna show you them because they're really cute and I'm really happy with them. But pair of socks number 2. These are my first ever pair of Felici socks. I have never knit with Felici before. These were my only balls of Felici yarn in my stash, and now they are a pair of socks. And here they are, and I love them. They were really, really fun to work on, because the yarn is relatively inexpensive. I wasn't too precious about knitting on them, so I pretty much took them everywhere. I didn't worry about them kind of getting damaged or anything like that. But yes, they do have a couple of problems because of the fact that I haven't always been in the best place when I've been working on them. First issue is I knit these 2 at a time with afterthought heels. I knit them cuff down. I did a 2x2 regular rib because I think it looks really nice with self-striping yarns to do that. I then put in just a regular toe, just a kind of decrease, knit row, decrease row, knit row, toe. So very uncomplicated. And I put the heels in afterwards. The one thing that I got wrong with these is my tension, because of, like I said, the stress knitting, has been a lot tighter on these than any other sock project that I've ever knitted. And what that basically means is, although I've been using same needles that I usually use and the same stitch count that I usually use, plus this yarn, I do think Felici yarn is a little bit thicker than a lot of the fingering weight indie dyed yarns that I usually use for socks. For example, the Selene yarn for the Scorpious socks. My tensions come up really, really tight, which has meant that these socks are a bit of a struggle to get on and off, which is upsetting because I like them and I want to be able to wear them, but I may have to gift them to somebody else who has skinnier feet than I do, and shorter feet than I do as well, because my other big boo-boo is that when I put in these afterthought heels, I really should have put them in on the pink stripe rather than the purple stripe, and that has meant that the foot is a little bit shorter than I would like them to be. My toes, when I put these on, are kind of squished at the top, at the toe rather, and there is a lot of give in these socks. I do think with wear they will stretch out. I am going to block them. They haven't yet been blocked. I've literally just finished them, woven in the ends and put them on the sock blockers. I am thinking of doing a good soak with them and then stretching them out properly, just to see if I can persuade them to be the right size for me, because I'd be so disappointed if I couldn't wear them at all, because like I said, the colour is making me very, very happy. This colourway is one that's no longer on the Felici website. I did have a little look and see if it was available, but it's called Candy Jar. And I do think that sometimes they repeat their colourways for Felici yarns, or you may be able to grab it online somewhere, but it's Candy Jar. It's really, really nice. The thing that I like about it is that I know that with some, sorry, I got fluff on my face now. With some Felici yarns, they tend to have two colourways that are very close next to each other, which basically means that you have one stripe that looks really, really fat in comparison to the others. And this doesn't have that problem. I suppose the main area where it might have been problematic is around this kind of green, cream and blue stripe, but they're all such different colours that doesn't happen at all. In terms of the colour that I used for the heel and the toe, this is actually a Cascade fingering weight yarn that was given to me as a mini. I do not know what the colourway is, but it's this lovely golden yellow, and I just think it looks really nice in contrast to the more pastel colours of the sock. But yes, that is my second finished object. For those of you who are interested, I use, for my vanilla socks, I always use 60 stitches on a 2.25mm needle. My preference is higher sharps, and I like to knit them 2 at a time on a longer cable. So that's how I knit these. And I was very indulgent and did a nice long leg on them, because I do like a long leg on a sock, particularly for autumn and winter, because then I can wear them with my big boots that I tend to wear from day to day. But I'm very happy with them. I do love them, and I hope, I'm just going to use them as a pillow, I hope that I can actually persuade them to fit my feet, because otherwise I'll be sad. So moving on from finished objects to works in progress. The work in progress is socks as well. I told you, it's been a Sockathon. It's been a complete and utter Sockathon over the past week. Socks are on the brain, and you have to embrace these things when they happen. You have to let your heart be happy with what it's happy with. And this project really is the epitome of happiness for me right now, because it's living in my Misty Mountain Made custom pug bag, which I love. Look at it. Look at it. I love it so much. I love this bag, and it hasn't had enough airtime on the podcast. It's just so cute. Little Rolly, even down to his cross-eyed face, which is adorable. But this is a project that I have shared on the podcast before, and it hasn't seen the light of day for a long time for various reasons. For one, I was going through a real funk when it came to knitting socks. Didn't want to knit the socks, like I said, but also this project, for a couple of different reasons, just wasn't gelling for me. And one of the big reasons, I think, was the needles that I was using. I originally cast these socks on 2.25 Knit Pro Symphony needles, which are wooden needles. They're rosewood, and I do love them, but my sock knitting really, really depends on me having metal needles in my socks in order to be able to zoom through them. I find the drag on wooden needles to be really frustrating when I'm trying to get a pair of socks done quickly. Because I like to knit 2 at a time now, it really does mean that I want them to go as quickly as possible, because I'm obviously doing twice the amount of knitting that I usually would if I were just working on one sock, so it feels like the whole process takes a lot longer. So when I finished my Candy Jar socks this week, I was knitting those on my higher sharps, as I said, and I picked up this sock project because this is now the only sock whip that I have on the needles, which I think is pretty amazing. And I swapped the needle out for the higher sharps instead of the wooden Knit Pro Symphonies, and I love it. I'm so happy that I decided to change the needles out in these, because I started on them last night. I knit on them whilst Emrys was away and Rolly and I were just hanging out together. I have knitted on them again this morning and I love them. The pattern is beautiful. I'll get to the pattern in a minute, but it made such a difference to change out the needles. So if you're ever having similar problems, guys, and finding a project particularly frustrating, if you can try it with different needles, you never know, it might give you a new lease of life around that project. But let me show you this. Aren't these amazing? Oh, I love them so much. They're bringing me joy. They bring me joy in every way, because like I said, they're living in one of my favorite project bags of all time. They are using an incredible pattern. This pattern is the Prairie Socks pattern, and it's a pattern by the incredibly lovely Kay Jones of the Bakery Bears podcast. Hi Kay, if you watch. I love Kay and everything she does, and the Bakery Bears, her and Dan, are such an amazing podcast. Definitely check them out if you haven't done. I'm sure that you have. Surely everybody has heard of them by now. But I am a big fan of Kay's patterns, and this one is no exception in terms of how lovely it's laid out and written, and it's just a joy to use, so you should definitely pick up a copy of it for yourself. This yarn as well is dreamy. This is actually A Homespun House by lovely magical Molly. Hi Molly, if you're watching. I love Molly's yarn. I love everything that Molly does. This was a yarn from one of her previous Harry Potter yarn clubs. And I'm sorry, Molly, but I can't remember the name, and I'm going to put it on the screen down below. It's quite a long name and I always forget it and I don't want to get it wrong, so I'll put it just down below so that you guys can see. I do not think that this is a colour that is repeatable, however, so I'm sorry about that, because I know that it's beautiful. All these kind of lavenders and blues and aquas, and it's gorgeous. It's so pretty. And I've also got my little Sugar Tots charm on here. This is one of the ones that I got sent, and I love it. This little bee. I had my narwhal, commonly known as, affectionately known as Norman the narwhal, on my candy jar socks, but this little fella is on my look at how cute, is on my Prairie Socks. Now these are actually another thing for my Harry Potter cowl, because like I said, the yarn is Harry Potter themed, and I call these my Magical Me socks because they remind me of something that Professor Lockhart would probably have worn and enjoyed, with the lavender in there and everything. But I am loving working on these socks. The pattern is a 3-row repeat, and it's relatively simple. It's something that is quite mindless but still very satisfying, because when you knit it up it just looks so pretty, and the yarn is glorious. It's so fun having a little fun progress keeper on here. I can't tell you how just having little things like this just make me want to knit on something all the more. But yeah, where the progress keeper actually is, that is the amount of knitting that I have done both last night and this morning, and I think that's pretty good, considering that it was just like an hour here and an hour there. They are starting to zoom, and I'm just really happy with them, and I can't wait to get them off the needles so that I can wear them. I am using this lovely lavender colour for my heels and toes. This was just a mini, again, that I was sent in a swap, so I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it's this lovely lavender colourway, and I think it will look really, really pretty with this yarn. I just think that they're going to be a really cute pair of socks when they're done. I do want to work on the leg a little bit more before I put the heels in, because like I said, I prefer to have a leg of a sock that's a little bit longer. But yeah, these are flying, and hopefully they will be finished soon, and then all of my socks will be off the needles, and you know what that means? Means I can cast on more socks, which is just amazing. And that's all of the creative content basically, because I haven't had time for sewing much as I would have liked to, or the kind of mental headspace for sewing, and I thought that's not very much in terms of kind of sharing creative content and ideas with you guys this week. So I thought, because I'm coming up to the end of my last pair of socks that are currently on my needles, I'm going to be thinking about what to cast on next. So I thought it might be fun to share with you a couple of special yarns that have been sitting in my stash for the longest time that are just crying out to be pairs of socks. These are the type of yarns that basically call your name in the middle of the night and say, cast me on now. And I thought it would be really fun to share some of those with you as a little kind of additional bit of content for this Sockathon style episode. So I have 4 different beautiful yarns to share with you. So first up is actually a commercial yarn, and this is a yarn that I have used previously, but I frogged the socks back, but now I am desperate to get another pair of socks on the needles for this. This is Regia yarn. This is one of the Arnie and Carlos colorways, and it's called Summer Night. This is the skein or the ball or whatever that I haven't used previously, and I have here, this is the ball that I did use before. So basically what I have here is my little cake from when I originally started this pair of socks, and the last part of the sock that I never got round to. I really want to cast on a pair of socks in this yarn as soon as possible, mostly because the Felici socks really did fly off the needles, and I think sometimes it's fun to mix things up and use some commercial yarn that you're not so precious over. I know that the yarns that I usually use are all indie dyed and beautiful and very special to me, and sometimes I think that that makes me worry a little bit more about what the end result will be. When I use something that's commercially produced, it can still make something that makes me really happy and end up being really pretty, but it takes a lot of the anxiety out of things, and when you're having a stressful time anyway, it's always good to cut down any forms of anxiety. The other 3 yarns that I have to share with you are all from small kind of independent dyers, and I love each and every one of them. I do have a lot more indie dyed yarn in my stash. I'm not showing you everything, but these are just the particular skeins that are really calling my name at the moment. First up is actually a relatively recent addition to my stash. This was sent to me by lovely Audrey, whose company is Audrey Borrego. I'm so sorry, Audrey. I'm really sorry. You may remember from a couple of weeks ago, Audrey sent me a beautiful prize for the Harry Potter cal, a selection of mini skeins which are gorgeous, but she also sent me this sock set, which is called Redhead, which I think is particularly appropriate considering that I am a ginger, and I love it. Ever since I've had it in my stash, this sock set, it's been calling out to me and it wants to be knit. The thing that I love most about it is how it reminds me of autumn, because I was watching Legacy Knits this morning, and I know that Chelsea, and huge congratulations Chelsea on your news, which you should go and check out her podcast or her Instagram if you don't know what that news is. Huge congratulations, sending you so much love. She was saying how she was longing for autumn. I am exactly the same. I want it to be autumn, I want summer to be over, and these 2 little baby skeins they just remind me of everything autumnal and gorgeous, and I love them, and I think that these would make a beautiful pair of vanilla socks. Possibly with a little bit of texture somewhere, but I think that really the yarn needs to speak for itself with this because it's so gorgeous, and I think that they will be delicious. So yes, check out Audrey's website, and I'll put her details down below. Next up is a skein of yarn, a self-striping skein of yarn, which I'm really dying to cast on. Self-striping is making me very happy at the moment, and this particular dyer is just incredible anyway, and one of the loveliest people I've ever had the pleasure to meet, and that is Kate of Hand Dyed by Kate, and this is one of her sock sets which I ordered from her specifically. It is her watermelon stripes, and just look at that. Just look at the glory of it. So it comes with this lovely green as a contrast for heels, cuffs and toes. The way that Kate's sock sets work is that you get 50 grams of the main colour yarn and then 20 grams for the contrast colour for heels, cuffs and toes, which is perfect for a pair of socks. and I just, I can't handle how amazing this yarn is. What I would say about Kate's yarns, this particular yarn, the watermelon self-striping, is that it's very, very labour intensive and she doesn't have it available throughout the year. I believe she does it maybe once or twice a year. So I was very, very glad to grab hold of some of this yarn for myself, and it really feels like, in contrast to Audrey's beautiful autumnal yarn, this just screams summer for me. So I feel like this will make me feel a little bit happier that it's summer instead of autumn, and I just want to cast it on so badly. I actually have 3 other of Kate's sock sets in my stash, and they're all calling out to me. They're all beautiful, but this one really is just screaming my name constantly. So I really want to get this cast on soon, because it's just so gorgeous. And like I said, Kate is wonderful, so knitting with her products makes me even more happy because I know that I've supported someone who is amazing. The last kind of skein of yarn that is really, 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 really making me itchy to get something cast on with it is a particularly beautiful skein of yarn from Knox Yarn Co. Now, Danielle of Knox Yarn Co. I think is one of the most talented dyers out there at the moment. I think she is wonderful, and I was lucky enough to get hold of this particular skein of yarn with my Doctor Who Valentine's Day kit that I got this year. It's called Love and Monsters, and it is gorgeous. It's all pink and blues and gorgeousness and speckledy goodness, and then it has this lovely kind of TARDIS blue for contrast, heels, cuffs and toes. I think it is stunning, and more than anything, I want another pair of Mercury socks out of this yarn. You will know from the socks that I knit up last year that I'm a little bit obsessed with the Mercury socks. I really, really love that pattern, and I need a pair of Mercury socks out of this yarn. I think that they will be gorgeous. My first ever skein of Knox Yarn Co. I will be sad to have it leave my stash because I don't have any more. I really need to get a hold of some more of this yarn, but it's in such high demand that it sells out really quickly. But unlike some of the other more kind of custom-y colorways that I've shown this week, this was specifically dyed up for Valentine's Day, but I have seen it in some of her shop updates since because I know it's very, very popular. So you might want to take a look at her Instagram and see whether or not you can get some for yourself. And you should, because it's amazing. As a kind of come down from all of that yarny excitement, I'm going to move on now to my Dear Katie segment. Now, this is my more interactive segment of the podcast, where if you want to ask me a question that I can answer on the podcast, you can send me an email with the subject line, Dear Katie, and I may answer your question on the podcast. So the first question was sent to me by Romy. So hi Romy, and thank you for your email. You say, I have a question about following knitting patterns. How do you keep track of where you are in a written pattern? Do you tick off each row as you go along? I do, but after using it a couple of times, I run out of space. So do you photocopy patterns or print them out new for each new make? Thanks for any tips in advance. This is where I need to share a little secret with you. I don't mark my patterns at all because I very rarely, if ever, print out a pattern. In terms of the patterns that I have them all on my phone, or I have some patterns like the ebony cardigan that I'm working on at the moment where I have everything in the pattern book, but I don't actually print out copies on paper. I think it's a part of me wanting to be as environmentally friendly as possible. The reason that I have a lot of things on electronic devices like my phone, I have an iPad, I obviously use my computer, is that I don't want to use a lot of paper by printing a lot of things out. So I very rarely will actually print out patterns at all. The majority of the time when I'm working on a pattern, I do not make physical notes of any kind. A lot of the time I will just hold where I am in my head, which is not always useful. I really should have a better way of kind of working out where I am in a pattern. If I do want to make specific notes as to where I am in terms of pattern repeats, if I'm doing something more complicated, I usually just use the Notes app on my iPhone. I probably should find a better way of doing it myself, but yeah, I will very rarely actually print out paper patterns and write notes on them. I will just store them all on my phone because I know that I won't be able to lose them. So yeah, I hope that that's helpful, at least in some way. And yeah, that's just what I do. For my second Dear Katie question, I'm actually going to go back to an email that was sent to me by lovely Trisha. Now, Trisha asked me quite a few different questions in one of her emails. The first question was regarding kind of filming and editing equipment, which I answered a few episodes ago. But this week, I'm actually going to go back and answer the other questions that she asked. Okay, so in the middle of your email, as we're cutting out the top question, could you talk a little more about what you did in theatre? Were you a dresser? Is that where you learnt to sew so beautifully? That's very kind, thank you. What do you do as your day job? I teach at-risk teens. I picture you working in a bookshop. Am I right? What is it like in England where you live? I've never been and I love watching knitting podcasts from around the world. I live in the suburb of Denver, just a few minutes from the big city, but also minutes to mountains. It's beautiful. It sounds absolutely beautiful, Trisha. But let's go back to your first question. So, can I talk a little bit more about what I did in theatre? So, I was not a dresser in theatre. That's not where I learnt to sew. I have never had any form of sewing career at all. But what I did in theatre is that I was a performer for a very, very long time. I graduated with a first-class honours degree in performance musical theatre option because I wanted to go into the musical theatre industry, and that is what I did. From graduating, I got my agent out of college and I worked professionally as a performer for, I believe, 6 years after graduating. And I was lucky enough to be in some incredible productions. I've done international tours, UK and Ireland tours. I've worked in the West End as a performer, and it was, as I've said before, because this is something I've touched on before on the podcast, it was both the best and the worst job that I have ever done. That's why I am no longer a professional performer. But yeah, that's what I did in theatre. What do I do for my day job? For a couple of different reasons, I can't tell you exactly what my current day job is, although it will not be my current day job for much longer. But even then, I will not be able to tell you what it is because it's for a large company that I'm not allowed to kind of go into the details as to what it is that I do. But I do work in IT as a technician, and I can't be more in depth than that. But it's something that I kind of fell into rather than actively pursued. And although it has been very good in some respects, like I said, it hasn't really been making me happy for quite a long time, and that's why I'm so excited that change is on the horizon. But like I said, more about that in the future where I can talk about it. Okay, what is it like in England where I live? Well, as I've said before, I live just north of London in the UK, and it's quite a suburban area. Hertfordshire in general is relatively suburban. We do have lots of kind of little towns, but also pockets of countryside around. It's very easy to get into London. The transport links are great. But in terms of what it's like, I suppose it's difficult for me to be able to tell because I've really grown up in this area for my entire life. But it's quite quaint. Where we live is quite pretty and picturesque. It's a town that has been around for quite a long time, so there are a lot of more historical buildings around. It takes a very short amount of time to be in the middle of the countryside, but I am very inland, so I'm not near anything kind of beachy or anything like that. And in terms of being close to mountains, there's no mountains around where I live. It's very flat, lots of rolling fields, lots of kind of sheep and cows around, but also where we are, we're relatively close to a small-ish town. So we have a lovely balance of being kind of still feeling like we're connected to more of a city life, but being in a very nice suburban area where lots of families are around, where it doesn't take us a very long time to be able to get somewhere that's a lot more rural and quiet and peaceful. Kind of what it's like around here. And also everything is quite packed in. I think that's something that a lot of people don't get with the UK, but we are a much smaller country than, say, a lot of places in the States. And that means that you don't have a huge amount of space for everything. So we're lucky that we do have room to kind of breathe. But just looking out my window now, for example, I can see other houses, I can see 2 other people's gardens, and yeah, everything's a little bit more compact here. But I like it, and we're very, very happy living in number 23. So yeah, guys, that is pretty much the bulk of the episode this week. Like I said, not a huge amount of creative content, but fingers crossed that'll change soon. But I'm not going to put a huge amount of pressure on myself to kind of get that going. Got enough other things going on, but as always, we're going to be closing up with General Waffle. General Waffle. And this week on General Waffle, I'm hopefully going to keep it short and sweet and not go on for too long, because goodness knows I can talk for England. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about my current situation, kind of vaguely, and how it affects me and the type of things that I have been actively doing in order to cope with that kind of a situation. I know that when I've talked about kind of mental health issues before and self-care, that a lot of you relate to that, and hopefully some of you will be able to take something from it for your own experiences. And even if you can't do that, maybe it will help you understand how some other people work and react to situations which may not be something that you're used to. This week's been difficult in combination with some of the more exciting and terrifying things that have been going on in my personal life, in my professional life, in the things that I don't do with the podcast. I have been, and without getting into too much detail because I really don't want to, and I feel that a lot of the situations I've been in recently have been dealt with, and that's absolutely fine. I have been receiving some negativity from social media in general. When you put out a podcast each week and you're putting parts of yourself online, it is something that can happen. You get a lot of positive feedback, and I am so lucky and so grateful for all of my gorgeous viewers, because you give me so much support and love, and that's why I come back and do this every week. But along with that, unfortunately, it is a sad reality of the internet and social media in general that sometimes you do get people who, sometimes it's just a misunderstanding. Sometimes people speak before they think, because we don't have as many filters with our online lives as we do in real life. Not necessarily something that I agree with, but like I said, a sad reality of the world that we live in. And sometimes we get people who just actively want to kind of cause trouble. You get all varying degrees of this type of thing. This podcast is a space that I invite anybody into, but one of the things that I have always said is that this is a place of positivity and a place of love, and people who want to bring toxicity into that, I don't have any time for those kind of people, and in general I will completely disengage. Over the past couple of weeks, because things have been erratic in my kind of personal life, things going on outside of the podcast, it's felt like some of this negativity has really started to impact on me a lot more than it usually would, because I'm feeling vulnerable. And that's really how I felt over the last couple of weeks. And I've been doing some things to kind of push me on through that and to remain positive and try to kind of look after myself and care about my mental health. And I just wanted to share those things with you in case any of you are going through similar things, because I know just how rotten it can be. I really, really do. I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying that this is the only way to kind of improve things for yourself, and I don't want this to come across as me telling you how to get better, because I know that in these situations there isn't a kind of simple solution to be fixed, and I also don't think that a lot of these problems need fixing. They just need you to focus on yourself, or at least in my experience, I know that focusing on myself and helping myself in certain ways makes me feel better. I don't think that I'm broken. I don't think that that feeling these ways is wrong. I just know that sometimes when things really suck and feel really crap, you like to do things that can alleviate those feelings somewhat. For me, it's important to allow myself to withdraw from time to time. When I am going through bad patches, the strongest emotion that I have inside me is to completely withdraw from everything around me and cut myself off Sometimes it is okay for you to tell people that you need to take some time by yourself to reassess what's going on. It's important for your mental health to not feel like you owe people a part of yourself, and that it's okay to take a step back. There are kind of extremes within that. Completely withdrawing from everybody forever, I do not think is the solution. But just taking some time to be alone, to be by yourself, and to figure out how you really feel is incredibly important. And it's one of the things that helps me get through on a day-to-day basis. My next point, which is kind of contrary to the first one, but I feel that the two are different sides of a scale in terms of finding a good balance within a person, is it's good to push yourself sometimes. When I feel in these dark places, as I like to call them, I don't ever want to do anything. Equally, that in too much is bad. And I'm very, very lucky that I have an incredibly supportive husband who encourages me to do some things that he knows will make me happy, even when I'm telling him, I don't want to go out, I don't want to see these people, I don't want to go and be in the world and be around people and have people, you know, because I think people will look at me, I think people will judge me, I think people will automatically think that there's something wrong with me. So in the last week, for example, we went out to see Spider-Man at the cinema, and we got food beforehand, and we spent time together but in a public place. And it was so refreshing to get out of the house, to get out of my cycle of kind of self-deprecation. And yes, sometimes it's needed for you to take that time, but at the same time it can be so beneficial for you to push back against those feelings, to not let them kind of fully engulf you, and to do something that you know will bring you pleasure. And I was lucky enough to be able to do it with someone who I always have a good time with. So yeah, fighting back within reason can be incredibly helpful. Going on from that, obviously Emrys is aware of everything that I go through in terms of my mental health, but that hasn't always been the case. There have been points in my life, and some of them relatively recently, where I have tried to bottle up all of these feelings and not talk about them with anyone, because it's easier to ignore them and just plug on day to day than allow yourself to admit that you are actually unhappy, even though everything around you is saying that you should be happy. Sometimes just admitting that to another person is the best thing that you can do, because of just saying those words out loud can be a huge relief. I'm really lucky, like I said, I have Emrys, I have an incredible relationship with my mum, I can talk to her about everything. I have lots of friends that I can talk to in particular at the moment. I know they won't mind me mentioning them, lovely Nikki and Amy, Nikki of Tea and Possibilities and Amy of Stranded Podcast. We talk all the time, and I'm so grateful to have them in my life, and I love them so much. Find someone who you can talk to, and if it's not someone in your personal life, try reaching out to some kind of support line or help line, because just talking to someone who has a third party perspective on these things can just be the most healing thing. And finally, in this little waffly waffle, something that I have come to learn about in the last couple of years, and something that I think is important for both people who suffer with mental illness, with depression, with anxiety, and those who interact with them, is positive intent. I know that one thing that I will always assume when I'm in a dark place is that there's always some veiled meaning to things that people are saying. I assume that someone's saying one thing and meaning something else. I'm automatically assuming the worst of that person. And I think that that's very important as well, from an outsider perspective into someone who suffers with these kind of issues. And that is, if someone suffers from mental health issues of any kind and you think that they are trying to be cruel or mean to you, or they're ignoring you in some way, that's the thing that I get a lot, because the one thing that I automatically withdraw from when I'm feeling like this is contact via social media. It's not a personal slight against anybody. And I think sometimes we forget that the people that we're talking to online have lives outside of the thing that's important to us. And that's entirely understandable, because we are at the center of our own universes. but I genuinely feel that on both sides it's important to take a step back, to take a breath, and to realise that there's probably more going on in the situation than we're aware of. A little bit of kindness and, like I said, a little bit of positive intent from all sides can just make the huge difference. Okay, waffling and everything to one side, I did want to finish up this episode with something a little bit more positive. Like I said, positive intent. Let's all try and be a bit more positive in our day-to-day lives, because goodness knows I appreciate each and every single one of you and the amount of love and support that you send to me on a day-to-day basis, let alone week to week when I upload the podcast. And I want to give something back to you as a little thank you for everything that you do for me. I have a little giveaway planned for you lovely people, and it's a giveaway that I'm super excited about because it involves quite a few lovely bits and pieces from some genuinely beautiful human beings who have been generous enough to send things to the podcast. First of all, it is going to include lovely Barbara's pouch from Knitting I Love, and also one of her lovely sets of tags. In addition to that, we will also have a skein of yarn from Lena at the Yarn Lab UK, this beautiful squidgy Donegal tweed yarn, which is in the Mage colourway. I love it, I think it's glorious. But it's not all, because in addition to that, lovely Laura of Tiny Human Knits, you may remember, sent me this Knit Notions pouch, which I wanted to keep for myself, but you guys, it's going to you, because you all deserve it. And I am so happy to be able to share some of these goodies with you. So if you want to be in the chance of winning this lovely selection of bits and pieces just because you're awesome, please head over to the Inside Number 23 Ravelry group, where I will have a prompt open. All I would ask that you do in that thread is just leave a comment below, sharing some love and some positivity, and maybe sharing a joke, maybe sharing a funny YouTube video, maybe just sharing something nice that you have to say about someone. It's a thread of positivity and a thread of joy and love. And I will be leaving this thread open for the next 2 weeks, and I will be drawing a winner then. Like I said, next week is probably not going to be a regular episode, so I will draw the winner the week after. So please head over to the Ravelry group and enter and share something joyous and positive just because you're awesome. And just thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I do produce this podcast every week and it is a lot of work, but you guys make it worth it. So thank you. That is everything that we have time for this week. Again, I'm sorry it's been a little bit all over the place, but that's just the way the cookie crumbled this week. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up symbol and hit subscribe to be kept up to date as to when we have new videos. For now, I am going to call it a day because I feel I've gone on for way too long already, but I'm sending you all huge amounts of love. Happy sewing, happy knitting, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Bye!